Montana frontier, late autumn. The wind doesn't just blow here, it carves. It strips paint from wood, pulls nails loose, and turns a man's face into leather before he's 40. Calder Boone's ranch sits in the middle of that wind, a collection of structures held together more by stubbornness than craftsmanship. The house leans slightly to the east, pushed by years of winter gales. The barn sags in the middle like a broken spine. Fences tilt at angles that make them more suggestion than boundary. This is land that breaks men slowly. Not through a single catastrophe, but through the steady accumulation of small failures. A fence post rotted through. Cattle lost to cold. Crops that never quite take. The kind of place where silence becomes a physical thing, pressing against your chest until you forget what your own voice sounds like. Calder stands at the stagecoach stop with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind that tears across the open road. He's 34 but looks older. His hands are cracked and stained with work, his face weathered into permanent squint lines. He stopped hoping for things years ago, stopped believing life owed him anything beyond the next season's struggle. He didn't send for a bride out of loneliness. He sent for one because winter was coming and a man can't run a dying ranch alone forever. The cattle were thin. The fences needed work he couldn't finish before the first snow. He needed help, not companionship. He needed someone practical. Someone who understood that survival came before comfort, that romance was a luxury for people who didn't have to worry about whether their livestock would make it through February. He expected plain. He expected sensible. He expected a woman who would see the ranch for what it was and accept it without complaint, who would work beside him in silence and ask for nothing he couldn't give. Then Lena Harrow steps off the coach. She doesn't belong here. That's the first thing Calder knows, certain as weather. Her traveling coat is clean, still holding the scent of city soap and laundered fabric. Her dark hair is pinned neat despite the long journey, not a strand out of place. Her gloves are unpatched. Her boots, though practical, haven't yet been broken in by mud and manure. But it's her eyes that stop him. They sweep across the landscape, the tilted fences, the sagging barn, the house that looks like it's one strong wind away from collapse. There's uncertainty in that look, but also something else. Calculation. Measurement. Like she's taking inventory of what she's walked into and deciding whether she can survive it. The wind pulls at her coat. She doesn't flinch. Calder feels something shift in his chest. Not warmth, nothing so pleasant. More like pressure. The way the air changes before a storm rolls in, heavy and electric, making everything feel suddenly tight. "You're Calder Boone?" she asks. Her voice is steady, controlled, with an eastern accent that hasn't been worn down by western wind yet. "I am," he answers, though he suddenly feels unfit for the title. Standing in front of her, he's aware of every stain on his shirt, every crack in his boots, the dust ground so deep into his skin it'll never wash clean. She looks at him for a long moment. Then she smiles, small, polite, brittle as thin ice. "Then I suppose I'm home." The word hangs between them. Home. It's a harsh word for what he's offering. A lie, almost. But she says it anyway, and Calder realizes with cold certainty that whatever he expected from this arrangement, Lena Harrow is not it. The ride to the ranch passes in silence. Calder drives the wagon, and Lena sits beside him, her carpetbag clutched in her lap like a shield. He wants to warn her. Wants to tell her that what she saw at the station was the best view she'd get, that up close, everything looks worse. But the words stick in his throat, so he says nothing. When they arrive, he watches her face for the reaction he's been dreading. The house looks smaller than it should, huddled against the landscape like something trying not to be noticed. The porch steps are uneven. One of the shutters hangs crooked. The whole structure tilts just enough that you notice it after a moment, like something's fundamentally wrong but you can't quite name it. Lena climbs down from the wagon without waiting for help. She stands in the yard, her clean coat already gathering dust, and studies the place with that same measuring look she gave the land at the station. Calder braces himself. He's seen disappointment before, in his father's eyes when the ranch started failing, in his own reflection when he realized he'd never pull it back from the edge. He expects tears, maybe. Or anger. Or the kind of cold silence that means a person's already planning their escape. Instead, Lena picks up her carpetbag and walks toward the house. "Which room is mine?" she asks. He shows her to the small bedroom off the kitchen, the only other room besides his own. It's sparse. A narrow bed, a chair, a washstand with a chipped basin. The window doesn't quite close all the way, and he can hear the wind whistling through the gap. "It's not much," he starts. "It's fine," she cuts him off. Her voice is firm, leaving no room for apology or explanation. She sets her bag down and immediately begins unpinning her hair, her movements efficient, practiced. Calder realizes he's standing in the doorway watching and backs away quickly, heat crawling up his neck. That night, he expects her to stay in her room. To hide from the reality of what she stepped into. Instead, she emerges an hour later in a plain work dress, her hair braided back, and starts sorting through his kitchen. The kitchen is a disaster. Calder knows this. Mismatched dishes stacked haphazardly. Supplies scattered across shelves with no order. Coffee beans mixed with nails in a tin because he ran out of containers and stopped caring. It's the kitchen of a man who eats to survive, not to live. Lena moves through it with careful precision, touching nothing roughly, but reorganizing everything. She groups like with like. Stacks plates by size. Lines up jars so their labels face out. Her hands never stop moving. "You don't have to do that," Calder says quietly from the doorway. She doesn't look up. "I need to keep my hands busy. Stillness doesn't sit well with me." There's something in her voice, not quite fear, but close to it. Like stopping means thinking, and thinking means remembering things she came here to forget. He doesn't press. Everyone who comes west carries ghosts. Some people run from the law, some from debt, some from family. Others run from versions of themselves they can't stand to be anymore. The West doesn't ask questions because most people don't want to answer them. Lena's ghosts are simply quieter than most. They don't make noise. They just keep her hands moving long after the work is done, keep her shoulders tight even when she's standing still, keep her eyes fixed forward like she's afraid if she looks back, something might be following. Calder goes to bed that night listening to the soft sounds of her still working in the kitchen, the clink of dishes, the scrape of a chair, the whisper of her breathing in the silence. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for anything. Somehow, that worries him more than if she had. Days settle into rhythm. Not comfortable, nothing about the ranch is comfortable, but predictable. Lena rises before dawn, before Calder even stirs. He wakes to the smell of coffee already brewed, the sound of the stove crackling to life, the quiet efficiency of someone who learned long ago that survival starts with discipline. She feeds the chickens without being asked. Collects eggs. Learn which hens are broody and which ones peck. She watches Calder work for 2 days, then starts helping without waiting for instruction. Holds fence posts steady while he drives them into hard ground. Carries tools. Learn the difference between wire cutters and pliers just by watching his hands. She's not fragile. That becomes clear within the first week. When the water pump breaks, she doesn't stand aside looking helpless. She kneels in the mud beside him, hair escaping her braid, dress already ruined, and holds the wrench steady while he works the bolt loose. Her hands don't shake. Her face doesn't twist with disgust at the smell or the grime. "You've done this before," Calder says, surprised. "Not this exactly," she replies. But I've learned that most things can be fixed if you pay attention to how they work. He glances at her, catches something in her expression, a shadow, brief and dark. Like she's talking about more than pumps. The ledger is where she truly proves herself. Calder's record-keeping has always been barely functional, numbers scratched in margins, dates guessed at, expenses tracked only when he remembers. She takes one look at his system and spends an entire evening reorganizing it. When she's finished, she presents it to him with the same careful precision she applies to everything. "You're losing money on feed," she says simply. "The supplier in town charges more than the one 2 counties over. And you're selling cattle at the wrong time, prices are better in spring than fall." Calder stares at the neat columns of figures, the clear notes in her precise handwriting. "How do you know this?" "I listened," she says. "To the men at the station. To the store owner in town. People talk if you let them." He realizes then that while he's been judging her as a city woman out of her depth, she's been studying this place like a problem that needs solving. Not romantic. Not emotional. Just practical. But despite all this, despite her competence, her steadiness, her willingness to work, she keeps her distance. She speaks to him gently, respectfully, but never deeply. Conversations stay surface level. Questions about chores. Comments about weather. Nothing personal. Nothing that requires her to reveal anything beneath the carefully maintained exterior. At night, after the work is done, she retreats to her room with a book. He can see the lamplight under her door for hours, and can hear the occasional turn of a page. Sometimes he hears her pacing. Short, restless movements. Like she can't quite settle. Like even in stillness, some part of her is running. He doesn't intrude. Whatever she's carrying, she'll share it when she's ready. Or she won't. Either way, it's not his place to demand explanations. But he notices the way her shoulders stay tight even when she's resting. The way she startles slightly when he enters a room unexpectedly. The way she positions herself near exits, always aware of where the door is. These aren't the habits of someone who lived an easy life back east. One evening, he finds her standing at the window, staring out at the darkening prairie. The wind is picking up, rattling the glass in its frame. She has her arms wrapped around herself, not from cold but from something else entirely. "Lena," he says softly, not wanting to startle her. She turns, and for just a moment, her mask slips. He sees exhaustion. Fear. The weight of something too heavy to carry alone. Then she straightens, and the careful control slides back into place. "Dinner's ready," she says. And the moment passes, buried beneath routine once more. The breaking point comes on an evening when the wind howls hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling beams. The kind of wind that makes the whole house groan, that finds every gap and crack and screams through it. Calder sits at the table, trying to focus on the ledger Lena organized, but the noise makes it impossible to think. Lena sits across from him, book open in front of her, but she hasn't turned a page in 20 minutes. Her hands rest flat on the table, fingers spread wide like she's trying to hold something down. Her breathing is too controlled. Too deliberate. The wind hits harder. The window rattles violently. Lena flinches. "It's just wind," Calder says, trying to sound reassuring. "I know," she replies, but her voice is thin, stretched tight. Another gust. The lamp flickers. In that brief darkness, he sees her face change, sees something raw and unguarded break through the surface. When the light steadies, she's staring at her hands. They're trembling now, no matter how hard she presses them against the wood. "You should know something," she says finally. Her voice is steady, but it costs her. He can hear the effort it takes. "I didn't come out here for a fresh start. I didn't come looking for adventure or opportunity or any of the things people say when they head west." She looks up, meets his eyes directly for the first time since she arrived. I came because staying where I was no longer possible. Calder doesn't move. Doesn't speak. He understands instinctively that whatever she's about to say, she needs to say it without interruption. I was engaged, she continues. To a man my family approved of. Wealthy. Respected. Everyone said I was lucky. Her mouth twists on that word. He was charming in public. Attentive. The kind of man who opens doors and remembers names. The wind screams outside. She doesn't flinch this time. In private, he was different. Not violent, not at first. Just controlling. Small things. The way I wore my hair. The people I spoke to. How I spent my time. He called it caring. My family called it devotion. She pauses. I called it suffocating. Calder's hands curl into fists under the table, but he keeps his expression neutral. This isn't about him. This is about her finally letting go of something she's been carrying alone. When I tried to end the engagement, he threatened to ruin my family's reputation. To spread lies about my character that would make me unmarriageable, unemployable. He had the connections to do it. The money. The influence. Her voice drops. So I ran. I found an advertisement for mail-order brides and I answered it. I lied in my letter, told you I was practical and simple and eager for frontier life. She looks down at her trembling hands. I'm not simple. I'm not easy. I'm damaged in ways I'm still discovering. And I'm terrified every single day that he'll find me. That somehow, despite everything, I'm still not far enough away. The silence that follows is thick, broken only by the wind and the creak of old wood settling. Calder takes a slow breath. When he speaks, his voice is quiet but firm. You don't owe me anything. Least of all explanations. She blinks, surprised. I sent for a bride because I needed help with the ranch, he continues. That's practical. Selfish, even. You came because you needed safety. That's survival. We both entered this arrangement for reasons that had nothing to do with romance or pretense. Her breath shudders, relief or heartbreak, he can't tell. Maybe both. I won't ask you about your past again, he says. And I won't let anyone take you from here unless you choose to go. Something in her posture eases. Not completely. Not enough to call it healing. But enough that when the wind hits again, she doesn't flinch. Thank you, she whispers. And for the first time since she arrived, Calder thinks he sees the real Lena Harrow, not the careful mask, but the woman underneath. Scared. Scarred. But still standing. The storm comes 3 days later. Not the metaphorical kind, the real thing. Autumn rain that starts as drizzle and builds into something mean. The sky turns the color of old bruises, and the wind picks up until it's tearing at everything not nailed down. Calder is checking the south fence line when he hears the crack. A section of fencing has given way, posts driven sideways into mud that's turned soft and treacherous. If he doesn't fix it now, the cattle will drift, and in weather like this, drift means lost. Maybe dead. He goes back for tools, expecting Lena to stay inside where it's warm and dry. The house is empty. By the time he reaches the broken fence, she's already there. She's soaked through. Her braid has come loose, dark hair plastered to her face and neck. Her dress clings heavy with water, mud splattered up to her knees. She's already pulled one of the posts upright, straining against its weight, boots slipping in the muck. What are you doing out here? Calder shouts over the rain. Helping, she shouts back, not letting go of the post. You shouldn't. You needed help. She cuts him off, voice sharp. And I'm tired of people deciding what I can and can't do. Lightning splits the sky, close enough that he feels it in his teeth. In that flash, he sees her face clearly, rain streaming down like tears that aren't, jaw set, eyes fierce with something that's been building since the day she arrived. Not fragile. Not delicate. Angry. The kind of anger that's been compressed for so long it's become steel. I'm not some porcelain doll that needs protecting, she continues, still gripping the post. I'm not going to break because of rain or mud or work. I already survived breaking. This is nothing. Thunder rolls across the prairie, deep enough to feel in the chest. Calder stares at her, this woman who stepped off a stagecoach looking like she belonged in a parlor, now standing knee-deep in mud, holding a fence post in a lightning storm, defying him to tell her she's not strong enough. He realizes something then, clear as the lightning is still flashing overhead. She didn't walk into his life like a storm. She is one. Not destructive, not the kind that tears everything down just to watch it fall. Cleansing. The kind that rips away dead wood and clears out rot so something real can grow underneath. The kind that terrifies you while it's happening but leaves the air clean after. He moves to her side, takes hold of the post. Together they drive it deep into the ground, Calder swinging the mallet while Lena keeps it steady. They work without speaking, rain hammering down, lightning crackling overhead, mud sucking at their boots with every step. When the last post is secured, Calder turns to find her watching him. Water streams down her face. Her hands are shaking, from cold or exhaustion or leftover anger, he can't tell. You sent for someone simple, she says, voice raw. I'm not that. He wipes rain from his eyes, looks at her standing there in the storm, still defiant, still holding her ground. No, he replies, and his voice is soft despite the thunder. You're not. And I'm done pretending I need simple. Something shifts in her expression. The anger doesn't disappear, but it loosens. Makes room for something else. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. They're both soaked through. Both covered in mud. Both standing in the middle of a storm that shows no sign of stopping. But for the first time since she arrived, Calder feels like they're actually seeing each other. Not the roles they're supposed to play, practical rancher, obedient bride, but the truth underneath. Two people who've been reduced by life, meeting at the same broken edge. Two people who never asked for simple, no matter what they told themselves. He extends his hand. Not romantic. Not symbolic. Just practical. Let's get inside before we freeze. She takes it. And together, they walk back through the storm. In the weeks that follow the storm, something changes. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just a slow shift, like seasons turning. They don't grow closer through sweetness or romance. They grow closer through labor. Calder teaches Lena how to check cattle for sickness, how to read the signs in their eyes, their gait, the way they hold their heads. She learns quickly, asking questions that show she's thinking 3 steps ahead. What causes this? How do you prevent it? What do you do if treatment doesn't work? She teaches him how to organize the winter supplies so they'll actually last. How to plan meals that stretch ingredients without sacrificing nutrition. How to read the ledger she's created so he understands where every dollar goes. They mend the roof together on a clear afternoon, Calder on the ladder while Lena hands up shingles. The work is tedious, repetitive. They fall into a rhythm, reach, pass, nail. Reach, pass, nail. No wasted movement. No wasted words. Why did you stay? She asks suddenly. Calder pauses, hammer raised. On the ranch? Yes. He drives the nail home before answering. My father built this place. Spent his whole life trying to make it work. When he died, leaving felt like admitting he failed. Like all that effort meant nothing. Lena hands him another shingle. And now? Now I realize staying might be the same admission. Just slower. He positions the shingle carefully. But it's the only thing I know how to do. She's quiet for a moment. Then, I understand that. Being trapped by the only option you can see. He looks down at her. She's shading her eyes against the sun, hair escaping her braid, a smudge of tar on her cheek. She looks nothing like the woman who stepped off the stagecoach. She looks real. You're not trapped here, he says. If you want to leave. I don't. The words come quickly, certain. Then, softer, not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm just learning the difference between staying because you're afraid to leave and staying because you choose to. That night, they share coffee at the kitchen table as the sun sets. It's become a ritual, this quiet half-hour between work and sleep where neither of them feels obligated to fill the silence. But tonight, Lena speaks. He used to control everything I ate, she says, staring into her mug. Said he was helping me maintain my figure. That he only wanted me to look my best. She pauses. I didn't realize I was starving until I got here and started eating real meals again. Calder's jaw tightens, but he doesn't interrupt. And my clothes. My hair. The way I walked. The tone of my voice. Everything had to be perfect because his reputation depended on having the perfect wife. She looks up. I thought that was love. Or at least, I thought that was what love cost. It's not, Calder says quietly. I know that now. She sets her mug down. Being here, working beside you, you've never once told me I'm doing something wrong. You correct my technique, sure. Show me better ways to do things. But you've never made me feel small for not knowing. You're learning, he says. That's different from failing. Yes. She meets his eyes. It is. Another evening, Calder tells her about his father. About the impossible standards, the constant disappointment, the way nothing he did was ever quite good enough. About inheriting not just a ranch but the weight of expectations he could never meet. He wanted me to be something I'm not, Calder says. Tougher. Smarter. Better with money. Better with people. I spent years trying to become that person, and all it did was make me hate myself. You're enough as you are, Lena says simply. The words land heavy. True. Unexpectedly. They don't try to heal each other. They don't try to fix what's broken. They simply stand steady, both learning that respect, quiet, durable, earned, is a stronger foundation than affection alone. That survival can be shared without one person carrying all the weight. That sometimes the strongest thing two people can do is just witness each other's truth without trying to change it. The first snow fell early that year. Calder wakes to a world transformed, white and silent, the kind of quiet that feels holy. Every ugly thing on the ranch is hidden beneath fresh powder. The sagging barn looks almost picturesque. The broken fence lines disappear. For a few hours, the place looks like what it could be instead of what it is. He finds Lena already awake, standing at the kitchen window with her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She's watching the snow fall with an expression he can't quite read. Not fear. Not sadness. Something softer. First snow, he says, moving to stand beside her. It's beautiful, she replies. I didn't expect it to be beautiful. Wait until February. You'll change your mind. She almost smiles. Probably. He pours 2 cups of coffee, hands her one. Their fingers brush briefly, accidental, familiar. Neither of them pulls away as quickly as they used to. They stand there in silence, watching the world turn white. The moment stretches, comfortable and still. Calder realizes this is what he never expected when he sent for a bride, not passion or romance, but this. Quiet companionship. Someone to stand beside while the world does what it does. Calder? Lena says, not turning her head. She's quiet for so long he thinks she's changed her mind about speaking. Then, barely above a whisper, I'm not afraid of work. Or this land. Or the cold. A pause. Her reflection in the window shows her eyes closing briefly. But I am afraid of being unwanted. The words hang in the air like the snow outside, delicate, real, impossible to take back. Calder sets his mug down carefully. Turns to face her fully. Lena, he says, and his voice is low, certain, carrying a weight he didn't know he had in him. I didn't send for you expecting a storm. But now that you're here, now that I know what that means, I don't want a life that's calm. She turns to him then, eyes searching his face for lies, for politeness, for the kind of words people say because they think they should. She finds none of those things. I wanted simple because I was afraid, he continued. Afraid of failing at something that mattered. Afraid of disappointing someone who expected more than I could give. Afraid that anything worth having was something I'd eventually lose. He gestures toward the window, toward the snow-covered ranch. This place is already failing. Has been for years. I can't offer you prosperity or comfort or an easy life. But I can offer you honesty. And partnership. And a place where you don't have to be perfect, just present. Lena's breath catches. Her hands tighten around her mug. You're not a convenience to me, Calder says. You're not just helping with the chores or someone to cook meals. You're. He struggles for the right words. You're the first person who's made me think that maybe this place isn't dying. Maybe it's just been waiting for the right reason to fight back. A single tear slides down her cheek. She doesn't wipe it away. I don't know how to be wanted, she whispers. Not really. Not without changing myself into something acceptable. Then we'll both learn, he replies. Because I don't know how to want someone without expecting them to fix me. But I'd like to try. If you would. The snow continues to fall outside. The kitchen is warm. The coffee steams between them. Lena sets her mug down. Take a small step closer. Her hand finds his, not accidentally this time, but deliberately. Testing. Trusting. I'd like that, she says. Not a declaration. Not a promise of forever. Just the beginning of something real, the kind built on truth instead of need, on respect instead of desperation. The kind strong enough to survive winter. And maybe, when spring comes, strong enough to grow into something neither of them expected. Something that looks a lot like love. Winter settles in hard after that first snow. The kind of cold that makes bones ache, that turns breath to fog and freezes water in buckets overnight. The ranch becomes a smaller world, the house, the barn, the short path between them. Everything else disappears beneath drifts that reshape the land into something unfamiliar. But inside, something is growing. Calder and Lena work side by side through the brutal months. Feeding cattle in wind that cuts like knives. Breaking ice on water troughs. Rationing supplies with the careful attention of people who understand that miscalculation means disaster. They don't talk about what was said that morning by the window. They don't need to. It's there in the way Calder checks that Lena's wrapped warm enough before they go outside. Lena makes sure his coffee is ready before dawn. In the small considerations that say I see you, I value you, your comfort matters to me. One night, a blizzard hits so hard they can't make it to the barn. They huddle in the kitchen, feeding the stove to keep the house warm, listening to the wind scream like something alive and furious. Lena sits close to the stove, wrapped in blankets, watching the flames. Tell me something true, she says suddenly. Calder looks up from the wood he's splitting. What do you mean? Something you've never said out loud. Something real. He sets the axe down. thinks. Then, I was relieved when my father died. The words feel like betrayal, even now. Not because I hated him, he continues quietly. But because I was finally free to fail on my own terms. To stop pretending I could be what he needed and just be what I am. Lena nods slowly. I burned my wedding dress before I left. Calder raises his eyebrows. I was supposed to preserve it. Pass it down. It was expensive, custom-made, imported lace. She stares into the fire. I took it into the garden at midnight and watched it burn. And I felt nothing but relief. They sit in silence, both watching the flames consume the wood, both understanding that sometimes the most honest thing you can do is destroy what's supposed to matter. I'm glad you're here, Calder says. I'm glad I came. Simple words. True ones. By the time spring breaks through, the ranch looks different. Not because anything's been rebuilt or repaired, but because it's been survived. The cattle made it through. The supplies held. The house stood against the wind. And Calder and Lena are still standing too. One morning in early March, Calder finds Lena in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. Sunlight streams through the gaps in the walls, turning the dust to gold. She's humming, unconscious, unguarded. He's never heard her hum before. She notices him and stops, almost embarrassed. Don't stop, he says. It's nice. She hesitates, then continues, softer. He moves to work beside her, mucking stalls while she tends the horses. The barn fills with the sounds of work and her quiet melody. It's not perfect. The barn still sags. The fences still need repair. Money is still tight, and next winter will come whether they're ready or not. But this moment of shared work and unexpected music and spring sun cutting through winter's damage, this feels like something worth keeping. That night, as they sit on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky impossible colors, Lena leans against him. Just slightly. Testing. Calder shifts to give her more room, his arm coming around her shoulders. Natural. Earned. Still scared, he asks quietly. Terrified, she admits. But not of you. Not of this. Of what then? That I'll wake up and find out I don't deserve it. He tightens his arm slightly. You do. So do you. They sit there as darkness falls, two people who sent away for practical solutions and found something far more complicated. Something that required honesty instead of pretense, work instead of romance, respect instead of rescue. Some storms don't destroy. They clear the air for what comes next. And what comes next, Calder thinks as Lena's breathing deepens against his shoulder, might just be worth all the weather it took to get here. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. And real, he's learning, is better than simple ever could have been. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold tales from the Wild West. Drop a comment below, what did you think of Calder and Lena's journey? Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.